chapter 16. Call me Ishmael. No, not really, don't call me Ishmael. But that's the first line, one of the most famous American novels of all time. Some of you may know that's the first line of the novel Moby Dick. Now, that is a story about a man named Captain Ahab who's bent on a crazy quest to get revenge on a white whale who actually took his leg in a previous incident in his life before the story starts. And he's bent on revenge. The entire story is played out through the eyes of a sailor named Ishmael. From Ishmael's perspective, we see everything we need to know about this story, about Ahab, about characters, about the boat, about the whaling industry in that time. We see so many details. Everything is explained and everything falls into perspective through the eyes of Ishmael. Today, we're going to see another Ishmael and another well that give us a similar perspective that we need today to understand God's Word. Now, Ishmael is spelled the same, but the well we're looking at today is not a W-H-A-L-E, it's a W-E-L-L, well. We're going to see that in the naming of a child and in the naming of a well, God is communicating His central message to us in this passage. So what is the topic? What is the question? What is the passage about? Well, the passage today is about how to strengthen a weak faith. What to do when you realize your faith is weak. We walk through this passage in Genesis 16. People see the story unfold, and ultimately, in the end, we'll see God communicating to us through the naming of a child, the naming of a well. We'll see what God is speaking to us, how He's answering that question about how we, you and I, can deal with those moments, those seasons, when we realize that we have a weak faith. Let's read together in chapter 16. I'm going to read the first 6 verses, and then we'll look at what God is saying in this section of the passage. Beginning of verse 1, it says, Abram's wife Sarah had not borne any children for him, but she owned an Egyptian slave named Hagar. Sarah said to Abram, since the Lord has prevented me from bearing children, go to my slave. Perhaps through her I can build a family. Abram agreed to what Sarah said. So Abram's wife, Sarah, took Hagar, her Egyptian slave, and gave her to her husband as a wife for him. This happened after Abram had lived in the land for 10 years. He slept with Hagar, and she became pregnant, and she realized that she was pregnant, and then she began to mistreat her mistress with contempt. Then Sarah said to Abram, you are responsible for my suffering. I put my slave in your arms, and ever since she saw that she was pregnant, she has treated me with contempt. May the Lord judge between me and you. Abram replied to Sarah, here, your slave is in your hands. Do whatever you want with her. Then Sarah mistreated her so much that she ran away from her. Doesn't sound like a very uplifting passage so far, right? Lots of trouble going on there. But what's the context of this passage? Well, a couple weeks ago we finished chapter 15, and we see this great moment where God makes a covenant with Abram. Remember, Abram is saying, God, it's been a while. You promised me a son and you promised me some land, and I don't really have those things yet. How do I know that you're telling me the truth? And God said, well, if my word is not enough, which I never lie, I completely speak the truth, but I'm going to make a covenant with you. In other words, I'm going to make a contract, a legal contract that's doubly binding because it's connected with a personal oath. Personal vow. So I'm going to make this covenant to you so that you can know forever, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that my word is trustworthy. That you can take what I say to the bank. Whatever I said for you will come true. What a great climax moment, right, in Abram's life. It's a reminder to us that God has promised certain things, and when God promises things, we too, like Abram, can trust those things, right? Then we hit chapter 16. We're reminded of just the human condition, how you and I can have moments of weak faith, of difficulty, right? And we see that Sarah is going to struggle with a similar situation, right? She's going to have some issues that she's got to work through, Abram as well, and Hagar as well. And maybe we can find that we experience similar situations. Sarah's problem is really found in two parts. The first part is that she's troubled that God's promise has not been fulfilled in her life yet. She's troubled, she's stressed out because she doesn't have a child, right? So she's thinking about God's promise, and then she's looking at her own life. She's not getting younger, right? And she's thinking, something's not right. I am stressed out because she's childless. And just like it would be today for many people in that day and age, being childless, especially being a woman being childless, caused great social and personal distress. Right? Great social distress. In other words, the community around her, there was this expectation you were supposed to have children. And if you didn't, people would possibly look at you as if something were wrong with you. Maybe God wasn't even showing His favor to you. These type of things were going on. There was a social stress coming on, but there's also a personal stress. She herself, like many of you maybe can relate to, was putting a lot of pressure on herself. She was worked up. She was distressed because she was not able to have a child herself. And if we were to put ourselves into her shoes, wouldn't we feel similar things? Right? If you were her and you were dealing with the same things, we would probably have a level of stress in our lives. But even if it wasn't this particular situation, you and I all have issues that cause us great stress. Right? Let's be honest. We have moments, we have seasons of life that cause great stress upon us. We are troubled by many things. You see, this problem was compounded, it was intensified because she was tempted by a situation that was right in front of her. She was tempted to find a solution outside of God's will. The first part of the problem was that she couldn't have a child, but the second part of the problem was a temptation that was sitting right in front of her. So what was the temptation? The temptation was found in her servant Hagar. You see, it was socially acceptable in this day and time for a man to take a second wife or multiple wives, especially so if the first wife could not bear a child. Now, let me just take a time out for a second. Nowhere in Scripture does God ever say this is a good idea, right? Nowhere in Scripture do we ever see that having a second wife turns out good for anyone, right? And so let's just remember that the Bible describes situations, it describes what goes on in many cases. We never see God saying, hey, this is a great idea. In fact, we know from Genesis 2 that this is not God's plan to have multiple wives, but we see this was something that was socially acceptable, right? We're reminded of an important principle that you and I should live by. Just because something is socially acceptable does not mean it is biblically acceptable. Amen. Amen? Right? So we can see there's different ways in which that works out, whether it's the society's view on sex and marriage or whatever it may be. Society may say that this is acceptable, but we have to go to the core of what is true, and we say, what is biblically acceptable, right? Those are just some things to think about as we deal with some of the details of this situation that Sarah is going through. The reality was for her that the stress of her situation, plus this temptation right in front of her to try to find another way to deal with her problem, it was a lot for her to bear. And it was tempting her to find a solution outside of God's will, right? That's what's going on here. And the combo of her stress and this temptation, it really exposed the nature of her faith in this moment. And so the same is true for us. A lot of times the combination of stress in our lives, the combination of temptations that come into our lives, they press upon us, they push upon us in such a way that it reveals the nature of our faith. And sometimes what is revealed is that we are weak in our faith to God. In other words, we're having trouble at that particular moment trusting that God's way is the best way. Now, we fall into those situations. This is not an unusual thing. And so the question that I want you to think about is not, will I ever have a weak faith? Right? The disciples said, hey, we have weak faith. Lord, help us. Right? There's several instances of weak faith in the Bible, and we fall in the same trajectory of those men of the Bible. So we don't say, will I ever have a weak faith? But here's what we need to be asking. What will I do when the weakness of my faith is revealed? That's the question that really is at play here today. Will I turn to God, or will I seek an alternate route? Right? Will I seek a different way? And so this is the question at hand. So Sarah is tempted. She has this stressful situation of her childlessness. And so what does she do? Well, we see that she makes some bad choices. And ultimately, if we let a weak faith continue, I think we can all agree, maybe from personal experience, from the Word of God, that a weak faith can lead us to bad choices, right? It can just lead us to bad choices. We don't operate in the way that we should. And we see two bad choices right off the bat in this situation. The first bad choice is that, we see in verse 2, Sarah suggests to her husband that he should take Hagar, this servant girl, as his wife. Now, there's two ingredients to this situation that really make it bad, that are the root, I would say, of the bad choice. The first is that she has come to a place where she sees God as a source, or as an object of blame rather than a source of blessing. That's what she says. The first thing she says to her husband is, since the Lord has prevented me. Now, the Lord has promised her a child. Now she's saying, the Lord has prevented me. He's not going to do it. So she's stopped looking at God as a source of her blessing and started seeing Him as an object of blame. That's never a good place to be. The Scripture is clear from the first pages that God, when we are near God, when we're in a relationship with God, that is where true blessing is found, right? But when we get that mixed up, we turn the table and we start seeing God as someone to blame, really gets us off kilter, gets us off track, it puts us on that detour away from God. That's never a good sign. So that's an ingredient in this situation. She's blaming God. But ultimately, notice the root of the problem is really selfishness. She is ultimately more concerned with her own reputation than God's will. Look at the personal pronouns, the first person personal pronouns in this verse. Since the Lord has prevented me from bearing children, go to my slave. Perhaps through her, I can build a family. Notice what she's concerned about. She wants a family. She wants a family for herself. She's concerned about the social pressure and her own personal feelings of guilt and shame. And so she wants a family. She wants this child, and she wants it now. And that's what she's concerned with. She felt that she was owed this, that she deserved this, and she deserved it now. You ever felt like that? You ever felt like, God, I need this. You owe me this. You should do this for me. That's usually a response of a heart that's just functioning from the generator of selfishness. And so selfishness never leads us to a good place. It always takes us down a path away from God. We don't think clearly when we're thinking selfishly. It's not how God has created us to operate. That's her bad choice. Bad choice number one. Bad choice number two, verse 3. Very short verse, but nonetheless a very important verse. Abram agrees. That first sentence there, very short sentence. At the end of the chapter, verse 2, very short sentence, very important. Abram agreed to what Sarah said. He said, sure, that sounds like a great idea. I mean, can you imagine that conversation? Can you imagine having that conversation with your spouse? Yeah, I think you should just, marry another woman. It's great. That's going to go well. And Abram, like a dummy, says, yeah, let's do that. That sounds great. And so bad choice number two, Abram agrees to this plan that's detouring around God's way. It's very interesting, this statement. There's a lot of interesting things involved in this statement. Abram agrees. It's a very, very short sentence, but it points to his passivity, right? And it reminds us of Adam in the Garden of Eden. Eve is over here talking to the serpent. Adam is right here. He's not doing anything. And ultimately she's like, hey, have this fruit. And he's like, okay, sure, we'll do that. He never steps in and he never says, hey, it's a bad idea. Abram is the same way in this situation. We're being reminded of Adam's sins finding itself in Abram's life as well. He says, yeah, let's do that. He doesn't step in. But here's what I think is more telling, more important. In the Holman, it just says that Abram agreed. But your translation may translate a little bit more literally, and it literally says that he listened to the voice, to the word of Sarah. It's interesting, right? Because he should be listening to the word of whom? Of God, right? Adam and Eve listened to the voice of the serpent and messed up big time. Anytime you and I don't listen to the word of God and listen to the voices of the culture and of peer pressure, or whatever it may be, we get ourselves into trouble. And Abram listened to the voice of his wife. And in this particular situation, she was not choosing a good path, and so to listen to her was not to choose a good path as well for him. This is a reminder to us, I think, of the importance of married couples working together, balancing each other out. Any given week, I'm going to make a bad choice. Thank goodness I have a spouse that can come alongside me and say, hey, is that the best choice? A spouse that can pray for me and say, let's get this on the right track. Or the opposite. Maybe she's making a bad choice. We balance each other out. I think that's important. Abram should have stepped up and helped his wife out through this time. He should have said, hey, let's turn to the Lord. He's promised us. But he says, no, yes, let me go into this slave woman. And so, ultimately, what we see in these first 6 verses really comes to bear in this last few verses. We see that a weak faith can lead to a harvest of trouble. A weak faith can lead to a harvest of trouble. Now, you understand the metaphor I'm using. I'm using an agricultural metaphor here. You plant a tiny seed, looks like it's nothing, put it in the ground, it can produce a tomato plant that maybe it has 30 or 40 tomatoes on it. That's a 40 times increase, right? A little tiny seed can do so much more than what it looks like. A little tiny seed of a weak faith can lead to a whole harvest of trouble if we're not careful. And so what that reminds us of, we really need to be careful in those moments when our faith is weak. Let's look at the progression. Let's look at how this plays out. Verses 3 through 6. What do we see? We see, first of all, that Hagar, so Abram marries Hagar, they become pregnant, and from the moment she becomes pregnant, Hagar begins to mistreat Sarah, right? She treats her with contempt. Isn't this a typical human response? We compare ourselves with others, don't we? We say, I've got something they don't have. I'm better than them, right? We like to do that. We feel, if we make ourselves feel better, we can kind of compare ourselves and say, I'm better than that person. And this is exactly what Hagar is doing. She's like, I may be a slave girl, but at least I have a child. And like, you can't even have a child. And so she's mistreating her mistress, her master, and so the problems are just beginning to intensify. What happens next? Well, can you blame her? Sarah gets mad at Abram, right? She says, hey, what are you doing? What is going on in this situation here? You are responsible for my problem, right? She shifts blame. Again, we see a very much an Adam and Eve response. Adam. God says to Adam, what's going on? Adam says, it's the woman. The woman says, no, it's the serpent. And now Sarah is saying, Abram, this is your fault. Never mind the fact that it was her idea, right? She went to him and she made this proposition, but she's angry. She's being mistreated and she's not responding well. She's shifting the blame and she says, you had better fix it, right? She uses a Hebrew idiom. She said, let God judge who's right? And that idiom is basically saying God knows what's right and wrong. You need to choose what's right. You need to do what's right. But ultimately what she's saying is this. She's using that typical expression, but she's really saying to Abram, I'm right and you're wrong. And God knows it. So you do something. Fix the situation, right? It reminds us of this as well, that sometimes, instead of owning our issues, owning our mistakes, and humbling ourselves before another person, we try to blame someone. We try to find someone to blame. We say, no, it's my brother's fault. It's my sister's fault. It's my friend's fault. It's my upbringing's fault. It's my parents' fault. It's my boss's fault. We want to blame someone for our mistakes. But God's Word says, humble yourself, own your junk, and deal with it. Ask for forgiveness. Ask God to forgive you. Ask the person to forgive you, and move toward the solution. But now we see this blame game going on. It's not helping. It's not solving anything. It just gets worse. We see that Abram, again, showing some passivity. He just washes his hands, and he enables Sarah to mistreat Hagar now. He says, you do whatever you see fit. He's like, I'm tired of dealing with this. This is stressful to me. You just do what you think is best. And so he enables Sarah to mistreat Hagar. And listen, we understand that common phrase that you've heard, the idea that, if mama ain't happy, ain't no one happy, right? You know that phrase? There's a lot of truth in that, right? I'm not saying that's the best way to live your life, but there's some truth in that. But the point I'm making is this. There's a point in which sometimes we just don't want to do the work to really deal with the problem. And so we just kind of throw our hands up and say, do whatever you want. You just have it your way. I want peace. And I don't want to have to deal with the problem. And so do whatever you think is best. I'm just tired of dealing with it. I think that's what Abram does. He says, listen, this is getting stressful. This is a lot of drama I don't want in my life. You do what you think is best, Sarah. He chose to be passive, right? Than to obey the plain voice of God. That's what we really need in conflict situations. We need to obey the plain voice of God. What has God said about how we deal with these situations? We all are prone to give in and do that. Just throw our hands up and say, whatever. You just do what you want. So Abram does that, and of course it leads to Sarah's mistreatment now of Hagar. She actually mistreats her so badly that Hagar runs away. And so this first 6 verses leave off pretty bleakly. Like, this is not a pleasant situation. Is this a home you want to be involved with? Right? Is this where you want to be? Right? And so it reminds us of how that little seed of a weak faith, those moments of weak faith, if you don't deal with it, if you don't do something about it, they're going to lead to a harvest of trouble, a whole heap of trouble. And the problem, really the root of the problem is not the impossible nature of our situation, the weight of temptation that we can never find a way out of. The problem is really a relational problem. Ultimately, what we find in this situation is there's not a lot of God in this passage, right? There's not a lot of trusting of the Lord. And ultimately, our problem, we get into a situation of a weak faith because we have a relational problem with God at the moment. And it's a call to us to be proactive, right? To take initiative, right? Not just sit on our laurels and just let the problem get worse. We need to do something to fix it, but how? Right? Well, the rest of the chapter is going to be dealing with the how. What do we do, right? So the majority of the remainder of this chapter deals with Hagar. We're going to see Hagar has some moments of a weak faith herself, that she's having some issues of weakness in responding in a way that is not good. So we begin to see what God does in her life, and we learn how we should respond to similar situations of a weak faith. Verse 7 says this, the angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness. The spring on the way to Shur, which is on the way to Egypt, he said, Hagar, slave of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going? She replied, I'm running away from my mistress, Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said to her, you must go back to your mistress and submit to her mistreatment. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will greatly multiply your offspring, and they will be too many to count. And the angel of the Lord said to her, you have conceived, you will have a son. You will name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your cry of affliction. This man will be like a wild donkey. His hand will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him. He will live at odds with all of his brothers. So she called the Lord who spoke to her, the God who sees. For she said, in this place I have actually seen the one who sees me. That is why she named the spring, or the well, a well of the living one who sees me. It is located between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave birth to Abram's son. Abram gave the name Ishmael to the son. Abram was 86 years old. Hagar bore Ishmael to him. The first thing we see in the second half is that a weak faith can cause us to run from our problems. We've talked about how weak faith can lead to bad choices. One of the bad choices it can lead us to is to run from our problems. Hagar, it's not bad enough as running from her problems. She's running to Egypt. Now, this is not a good choice. A pregnant woman walking through the desert with no help, it's not a good choice. Usually I wouldn't recommend that. But the bigger problem is this, is that she's leaving the household in which God has promised to bless. Remember, in Genesis 12, the calling of Abram, God says, I will bless you. I will give you a son. I will give you land. I will make you a great nation. He says this, I will bless all who bless you. In other words, all who join you, all who see and understand what I'm doing through your family will be blessed. All who join that work of mine through you and your family will be blessed. But those who attack you, those who curse you, they will be cursed. Hagar is leaving that place of God's blessing. God has promised to bless His people. He's promised to share His blessing in a unique way among His people, and she's turning from that. Essentially, she's turning away from God. She's saying, I'm gonna take my own detour. I'm gonna do things my own way. I'm frustrated in how I'm being treated, and I'm gonna go my own way, figure it out on my own. She's turning from God. How does this apply to us? Well, we have so many people today who think the best choice in difficult times is either to turn from God or to leave His church. I want to encourage you to think on that. It's not a good choice. It never works out well when we run from God, right? And it never works out well when we cut ourselves off from God's people. Because God has said, I will show a special outpouring of my blessing among my people. Amen. And so we need to be a part of a body of Christ, a local group of Christian brothers and sisters, the family of God. We need to be a part of God's family. It's where God pours out a unique experience of His blessing, right? And so let's not turn, let's not run, let's not think, oh, because this church is not perfect, I've got to leave. Listen, no church is perfect. No pastor is perfect, no teacher is perfect, no missionary is perfect. What we need, though, is to be real with one another and not run from our problems. Listen, we're all struggling with certain things. We're all struggling with our imperfections and our iniquities in some way. We need to be real with God and real with one another. God has promised to bear our burdens, but we see in the Scripture the call upon us to bear one another's burdens as well. Let's not abandon one another. Let's not run from our problems. Let's not choose the path that Hagar has chosen in this passage. When you run from your problems, ultimately you're just delaying the inevitable. Ultimately you're wasting your life. I'm going to encourage you today, don't waste your life. To run from God is taking precious moments of your time, your limited time on this earth, and wasting it. Like the prodigal son, taking your inheritance and just squandering it, and then realizing, wait a minute, that was a terrible choice. Let me go back to my father. So it's never a good option to run from God. The angel's message, the message from the Lord to Hagar is this. Listen, doing things God's way may be difficult, right? But in the end, it's the best way. He says, listen, go back to your mistress. You may have to endure harsh treatment, but this is where you need to be. This is where you belong. Your master's house is where you need to be. This may be difficult, but it's the best choice. Sometimes it's not easy to be open and honest in the family of God. Sometimes it's not easy to do the work of God when you see things that you don't like, when you see things that are hard. And God says, listen, it's where you need to be. You need to be in the family of God. You need to be operating and functioning and fellowshipping with your family. He says, listen, in your master's house, you'll find blessing. You'll find the blessing that I have for you. He said, go back to Abram's house. I promised to bless this household. You will find that. For us today, it's similar. We have blessings in Christ. God is saying, operate, live, experience the blessing I promised for my people. I think also in this section we see it's interesting that God pursues Hagar, an Egyptian slave woman. We don't know a lot about her spiritual state. We don't know her heart, but we see that God pursues her and brings her back. What an amazing picture of God's grace. He didn't cut her off. He didn't say good riddance. He showed grace to her, bringing her back. I think as a people of God, we need to remember that. We're going to have people that make mistakes. You're going to have a pastor like me who makes mistakes. We need to show grace to one another because we've been shown great grace. Right? I think sometimes as a church we think that we need to be the punishment of God to people. That we need to be kind of the whip and the rod to people. And listen, there are times when we need to rebuke someone. There are times when we need to be disciplined, use church discipline. But I think many more times we need to put the whip down and put the rod down and show grace and love. Because we've been shown much grace. What is the ultimate thing that she learns? Well, we see this played out in this scene where she's promised this son. This son is given a name. The well is given a name. We see from these things, we begin to understand from what Hagar learns, we learn how we should respond in times when our faith is weak. First thing that Hagar learns is that God hears her prayers. God says, name this child Ishmael. Ishmael means God hears. God is saying, I'm going to give you an object lesson that's going to last for the entirety of your life. That I hear your prayers. That when you cry out in affliction, when you cry out in distress, I hear those prayers. In other words, he's saying, call out to me, all who are weak and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Call out to me when you're sick and you're troubled and you're stressed, and I will hear you. Hagar learns that God hears her prayers. And folks, please learn that. Right? Please know that. Hagar also learns that bad choices can have consequences. Listen, Ishmael is going to be a troublesome child. He's going to be blessed in one sense. He's going to have lots of descendants. As a son of Abraham, he's going to have lots of descendants. But he's going to cause a lot of problems. We're reminded that, yes, God's grace is amazing, but sometimes we still have to deal with some consequences of the choices that we've made. That's just the reality of it. Hagar will have to face some difficulties. Ishmael will be a rebel of a man. Ultimately, if you trace the line of Ishmael, you'll know that that the Arab people come from Ishmael's line. Still to this day, Ishmael and Isaac's people fight each other, right? Isaac becomes the true son of Abram and Sarah. So we see that the truthfulness of this statement. We choose to do things in a way other than God's way, it can often lead to consequences. And so it just reminds us of the importance of dealing with the weakness of our faith in that moment, not delaying. We also see not only does Hagar learn that God hears her prayers, that bad choices can have consequences, but she also learns that God sees her needs. She cries out to God and she names this well, this spring, the God who sees, the one well of the living one who sees me. And this is key in the Old Testament, the idea of God seeing us. It's not just that God has, capabilities of seeing. In the Old Testament, when God sees, He sees so to act. God looks at our dilemma so to respond with help. I think that there's a very clear sign pointing to Exodus chapter 2, when it's at the end of that chapter when it says that God heard the Israelites and He saw their affliction. Right? What does God do for Israel in Egypt? He rescues them out. When God sees, He doesn't just look and say, oh, look at that fact that I just saw. Look at that thing I just saw, and turn away. God sees so to act. And so the same is true here, and Hagar understands that. She learns, He pursued me. He came and He rescued me. He heard my prayers. He saw my need, and He's providing for me and my son. Ultimately, this is what she learns. This is the big idea. This is the big point of the whole passage today. She learns that when our faith is weak, we should ask God for help because He hears our prayers and sees our needs. When our faith is weak, we should ask God for help because He hears our prayers and He sees our needs. This is a passage about persistent, faithful prayer in your time of need. Hagar got it at the end. She understood it. She said, okay, I'm not going to run from my problems. I get it. I see what you're saying. You hear my prayers. You see my needs. You provide help for me. And ultimately, we actually see Abram actually gets it. It's not a lot said about Abram, but in verse 15, he listens to what Hagar tells him, and he names the son Ishmael. Now he understands that Ishmael is this object lesson for him and for Sarah, that they should cry out to God when they're stressed and tempted and their faith is weak. Why? Because He sees their needs. He sees their needs. He hears their prayers and He sees their needs. In the story of Moby Dick, Captain Ahab is so blinded by his pursuit of that whale that he doesn't really pay attention to anything else. He's so consumed by that. He's so burdened by that, so led by that. And so it leads to his demise. I hate to ruin the book for you if you haven't read it, but he doesn't turn out well for Captain Ahab. Many of us today, we're carrying a lot of baggage. We're carrying blame. We're carrying bitterness. We're carrying a stressed out heart. We're carrying difficulties and temptations that we feel are just not fair, it's too much. We've all got something, right? My encouragement to us, let's not be consumed by those things like Captain Ahab was consumed by his lust for revenge. Let's not let the weakness of our faith lead us to make bad choices like Abram and Sarah and Hagar. Today, this is the application. It's clear for us. We've got some burdens and baggage and issues and conflicts and stress and situations in our lives. And we need to come before God and say, God, my faith is weak today. My faith is weak in this moment because of these situations. And I need your help. And we need to ask Him for His help today based on the truth that He hears, He sees. What is it? What is it that you have? What burden is it that you have today? When we close this service, when we have this time of invitation, what's most important is not that you're singing a song or that you do that. What's most important is that you deal with that between you and the Lord today. So listen, it's not going to break my heart if no one is singing. Maybe a little hurt Leo's heart, I don't know. But if you're praying to God, if you're truly crying out to Him during this final song, then that is where you need to be. That's what you need to be about. That's what God is calling us to do, to say, God, here's my burden. I'm weak. I'm tempted to go at this another way. But Lord, I need your help. I trust that you'll help me because you do hear, you do see. Provide the need. Provide for the need that I have. As we close, I want you to think about that. What is the need that you have? Did you bring that before God? Maybe you're here and the need is direction. Maybe it's guidance. Maybe it's for something to be lifted. Bring that before God. As we sing, as we praise God, as we respond in this final moment, would you respond to the Lord in prayer as He's leading you in this